Welcome back. Now it's time for our daily press review, and we start today from Al Ahram newspaper, and we read the vote counting process finished in most of the polling stations. Vote counting was finished on Monday in most of the polling stations of the first stage of the parliamentary elections. Earlier on Monday, the polling stations opened at 9 a.m. for the second day of voting in the 14 governorates in which the first stage of the elections take place. The vote continued from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Cairo local time and was extended in some polling stations. About 27 million Egyptian voters are eligible in the first stage to choose from 2,548 candidates, vying for 226 seats for independents and 60 seats for party lists. The vote was overseen by about 81 NGOs represented by more than 17,000 observers, in addition to 6 international organizations and 68 embassies. The Interior Ministry had announced that 120,000 policemen and central security forces would resume their polling stations across Egypt. They supplemented the 185,000 army personnel who helped to provide security for voters, judges and monitors across Egypt.
And dear viewers, from اليوم السابع, we read the Prime Minister Sharif Ismail follows up on the electoral process. Prime Minister Sharif Ismail was following up on the first parliamentary elections in the second day of voting from the operation room of the Cabinet Information Center. The Prime Minister held a video conference calls with governors of the 14 governorates in which vote in the first stage of elections is held. The Premier followed up on measures to secure the vote and means to facilitate the process. Earlier, the Prime Minister declared a half-day holiday on Monday for state workers to give them a chance to take part in the elections.
And moving to Al Watan newspaper, and we read HAC says turnout for Egyptian expats voters reach 40%. Higher Electoral Committee spokesman Councillor Omar Marwan said on Monday that turnout for expats voters abroad reached about 40%. Earlier, the vote counting of Egyptian expats in the first stage of parliamentary elections was concluded in consulates and embassies abroad. In Germany, Ambassador Badr Abdulati said the counting ended in the presence of observers from the Arab League. In Kuwait, Egypt's ambassador to Kuwait said that the turnout was higher on the second day, noting that voting continued till 11 p.m. Egyptian expats voted on Saturday and Sunday in the first stage of the parliamentary elections. Embassies and consulates around the world were opened for the vote. The Higher Electoral Committee had earlier said that voting would not take place in Yemen, Syria, Libya and Central African Republic due to the security situation in those countries.
And dear viewers, now moving on to اليوم السابع, where we read President Sisi meets with the CEO of Russian Rosatom. President Abdel Fattah Sisi met on Monday with Sergei Kirienko, the CEO of Russian Rosatom Corporation, which is specialized in the field of nuclear energy. During the meeting, the president discussed with Kirienko, who arrived in Cairo earlier on Monday, the Dab'a nuclear project and the offer of the company to establish the Dab'a station. The president emphasized the strength of the outstanding historical ties between the two countries. Sisi also pointed out that Egypt attaches great importance to provide energy needs, whether at the level of the local needs of citizens or at the level of the fulfillment of the investment requirements and new projects that are set up in Egypt. For his part, the Director General of the Russian company hailed the progress of the Egyptian-Russian relations, stressing the company's aspiration to contribute to meet Egypt's energy needs, especially in areas where Russia is specialized, including the production of electricity from nuclear power.
And still with اليوم السابع newspaper, and we have the following headline. Justice Minister participates in the 4th Forum of the African Union. Minister of Justice Councillor Ahmed Al-Zind thanked on Monday African delegations participating in the 4th Forum of the African Union for their country's support to Egypt's candidacy for the UN Security Council non-permanent membership. Al-Zind pointed out that the election of Egypt confirms the confidence of the international Arab and African communities in the Egyptian efforts to achieve peace and international stability. During the forum, the Minister of Justice said that the African Union Forum will discuss the most important international laws pertaining to the country's wealth and legislation, pointing out that all members rally for economic and trade cooperation together. Zind expressed the importance of including the file of terrorism on the agenda of the fourth forum of the African Union, saying that time, effort and money in the elimination of terrorism is the golden key to solve all the problem of the continent. He explained that Africa is not short of cadres that can lead any regional or international organization, as it has generations who combine knowledge, experience and culture. The Justice Minister said that what lacks the continent to achieve the long-awaited dream is unification of the African currency, so they can promote economically.
And dear viewers, still with اليوم السابع, where we read Immigration Ministry prepares migration bill. Immigration and Egyptian Expatriate Affairs Minister Nabila Makram Abdel Shahid continued on Monday her visit to Australia. The minister announced that her ministry is coordinating with other ministries to communicate with Egyptian expatriates and prepare a draft law on immigration, which will be presented to the upcoming parliament. Abdel Shahid called on Egyptian expatriates to take part in discussing the bill through the ministry's official website. The minister listened to the problems which Egyptians living in Australia are facing, as well as their suggestions, and promised to convey them to the government. Earlier, Abdel Shahid described Egyptian expats as sons of the homeland, not migrants, during a celebration by Egyptians in Sydney. The minister arrived in Australia last Friday to follow up on the election procedures abroad.
And moving to Al Watan newspaper, and we read Egypt seeks £360 billion in private sector infrastructure investments this year. Minister of Investment Ashraf Salman said on Monday that Egypt will need £360 billion in private sector investments in infrastructure projects in the 2015-2016 fiscal year. Speaking at the third annual PPP Investment Summit Egypt in Cairo, Salman said that to reach its target growth rate of 5 to 5.5% of GDP, Egypt will need to attract £360 billion in investments. He said that the targeted investment plan for the current fiscal year is £420 billion. Earlier, the investment minister said that Egypt targets $10 billion of foreign investments in the fiscal year 2015-2016. He added that the Egyptian economy grew by 4.1% in the fiscal year 2014-2015, and he expected it to grow by 5 to 5.5% in the fiscal year 2015-2016. Egypt's net foreign direct investments, FDI, rose by 54.6% in the fiscal year ending 30th of June 2015 to stand at $6.37 billion. According to the central bank's September bulletin, Egypt's FDI rose by $2.25 billion since standing at $4.12 billion a year earlier.
And dear viewers, moving on to Nile News, where we read airstrikes on Daesh convoy in Syria kill 40 extremists. Airstrikes on a convoy of the Daesh extremist group killed at least 40 extremists in central Syria. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said unidentified warplanes hit the 16 vehicles in Hama province, killing the extremists. The observatory was not immediately able to say whether the raids were carried out by Russian warplanes or Syrian army ones. Earlier, Syrian army forces advanced in the northern province of Aleppo with air cover from Russian warplanes. Syrian troops have been advancing in Aleppo, Hama, Homs, and Latakia provinces, taking advantage of Russian airstrikes against Al-Qaeda affiliate Al-Nusra Front and other extremist groups. Syrian army forces control the western part of Aleppo city, but much of the surrounding province is held by extremist groups, Al-Qaeda and other in the west and Daesh in the east. Syrian army troops seized at least 5 villages and several strategic hilltops south of the city. that brought them to the edges of Al-Haidar, 25 kilometers from Aleppo.
And moving to Al-Watan newspaper, and we read some economic news. Egypt stock markets gain 4.6 billion pounds, EGX 30 rises 1.1%. Egypt stock market closed in the green zone on Monday as the benchmark EGX 30 index rose 1.11% to 7,621 points with a turnover of 518 million pounds. The small and mid-cap EGX 70 index and the broader EGX 100 index increased by 1.71% and 1.19% respectively. Arab and foreign institutions were net sellers, recording net flows of 33.3 million pounds and 33.6 million pounds respectively, while local institutions were net buyers, recording net flows of 109.5 million pounds. The market gained 4.61 billion pounds, hitting 457.69 billion pounds compared to Sunday's 453.08 billion pounds. And now, our dear viewers, this was the last item in our press for today, and now we'll go for a short break and we'll resume the breakfast show, so stay tuned.